Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. That's enough with the feeding and watering stuff. It comes around every now and again, and it's just one of those things that just comes round now and again. So it gets chatted about, sometimes it gets a bit out of hand, and during such periods it would be easier if you just dropped by my channel to not even know I had any orchids. So let's get back to the orchids. This is really just a quick look round because I've got something specific in mind for tomorrow, but I'm just hoping to get a sunny day, but I don't think it's going to happen. So we got the lights on again. Looking at the couple of videos I've done during the day with the lights on, the colour changes are not dramatic, so I'm still happy to film during the day. There will be a few tinges on colours. One thing I did notice is that my skin looks like I've been out in the flipping sunshine. It's definitely got a little pink tinge as opposed to its normal gnarly old look that it's got. But yeah, so this is more of a look round on the grounds that there's some things to come that have not necessarily been talked about, and some things that are on their way out which I want to catch literally, because you know the everything in bloom is still quite a few days away. So so we'll just start and look. I think that's the easiest way. Now, some things I can't get at easily, like the white Vanda, and that's in the shadows at the moment, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to turn up. Looking at the screen, the colours look right, but the lights aren't directly shining on that. They're sort of filtered in through other plants. But that large white Vanda, come the sort of time of year when I might think about shifting some plants. I mean, I've got some kikis of some Dendrobiums and things, and possibly a couple of other things. I've got a feeling that Vanda might go. So that might be up for grabs come the spring, when obviously you can post it without freezing its socks off, which is what would happen this time of year, obviously. My little orange Vanda up there, I can't get that down at the moment. See if I can get some leaves out of the way. That spike's starting to fade now, but if I can just twist the plant slightly, the next spike is coming on. That's starting to, and this spike, the latest one's going to come out of the front of the plant instead of going out round the back like the last one did, so that'll be better. So that'll be a while off blooming, that second spike, and the spike that's open now will need to come off soon. The big blue one, which yeah, colours aren't looking true on that, but that's lasting so well. I'm just so pleased that that was such a good spike and is lasting well. And given that this Vanda had some serious problems last winter, looking at it now, you'd hardly be able to tell that it had the problems. There are still a few leaves that have got the signs, but it's sort of recovered. I can't even find a really bad leaf now. So whatever it was, it got over it, and it's grown a lot this year. It's actually put on quite a lot of top growth. You can usually tell on the larger Vandas like these, it is said that you can think of 3 or 4 leaves as a pseudobulb. So you need to get that sort of number of leaves to get another spike initiated lower down the stem. That's not going to be the same for all Vandas, obviously. It's going to vary depending on vigour and temperatures and things. But as a general rule, and it's also been said that if you've got a young Vanda seedling that you're growing on, it's going to need about 10 leaves before it thinks about spiking. But again, you know, that might not be true of all Vandas. Some Vandas are genuine miniatures, and they may well bloom with less leaves. But I think age-wise, a Vanda needs to be about 5 years old before it will spike. But then, again, it will vary from time to time. Up here, the tiny twinkle spikes are pushing on. The biggest spike is poking out round that side, so that's got a nice spike there. And the others are pushing on now, so that's good. The Cattleya cernua is opening up nicely now. Get that one down. Oh, that's going to look odd in the lights, I suspect. But the blooms are starting to open. From memory, they don't go dead flat. They do have a slight cupping shape to them. So they're blooms to look into rather than look at from the side, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So a lot of Masdevallias and things are like that. You need to get around the front and look into them to get their best colours. But you know, each one of these new growths that opens has buds. I mean, that little one in the centre of the shot now is just cracking the leaf. You can see the buds forcing their way out. And there's other new growths that haven't started to open yet. Even that little one down the bottom there, that's got buds. So this is a good blooming. So far, every single new growth as it's opened has got buds inside. And they seem to be averaging 4 or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4. Oh, the others aren't far enough out to look yet. But yeah, 4 or 5 blooms per spike. Now I'm sure last time when it had what I considered to be a mass blooming, the average was 3 and 4. So it looks like more blooms per spike and all the new growths opening at roughly the same time. So that's a bonus. And I'm hoping that's how it's going to do a repeat performance from now on. Because it used to have scrappy blooms every now and again. And I used to categorise it as one of those that seems to bloom on and off when it likes. Well, now it seems to have got into a nice regular pattern. And although it may not bloom at the same time of year each time, I'm more interested in the fact that when it does bloom, they all come out together, because it's putting on a nice little show at the moment. More to come, more to come. It's that little one. The little Cattleya up there, which I'm not going to get down, that really has changed its colour. That was a bright daffodil yellow when it opened, more along the lines of the colour in the lip, and it became, I think the expression is reticulated or curled back a bit. It did that after about 2 weeks, changed its shape, and then gradually it's become more and more orange as it's aged. I don't know how much longer that one's going to be there. It's already been out quite a while, so it's lasting well. I think a lot of the thing with Cattleyas is if they do happen to bloom when there's cooler temperatures around, they do just naturally last longer. That's just the way it is. The Oncidium sotoanum is the oldest spikes on here are now starting to get a bit tatty looking. They've dropped quite a few blooms and they're fading towards nearly white as they age. So these are newer blooms here. So they've got a lovely pink flush to them, whereas these here are old blooms and they've almost gone white. And yeah, some of these are starting to die back now, but I did notice when I was watering that the other day, when I planted this up, when I repotted it, which some people thought was a bit dodgy with all those blooms on it, and you have to bear in mind I took off half the blooms, that's what's left. So it was a mass blooming on that thing, but all the growths were blooming at the same time. There was not a sign of any new growths on this plant anywhere. It sort of matured all of its growths at the same time. But we do have new growth starting now, so that will be the replacement root system. Obviously repotting a plant that size there was a little bit of damage. I can't remember what exactly these new growths look like, but this is the Miltonia Sunset that had quite a bad dose of Fusarium in it. We went through all the treatment phases and all that sort of thing, but what I can't remember was how big the new growths were at the time and whether they've actually started to grow yet. But the leaves haven't shown any signs of deterioration, so I think it's going to make it. But that's really should be a subject of a separate video, really. Looking down in the depths down there, there's quite a few Restrepias out, and I do have some Paphiopedilum buds lurking. I can't remember which plants it's on. Let's get Tatty out of the way. Do you know, one day I'm going to pick that thing up. It's Ranco Stylus Gigantea's pair of. One day I'm going to pick that up and I'm going to look at it and I think, nah, you're going out, because it really is scruffy. Anyway, let's see if I can reach this one. Ugh. Yay! We have a Paphiopedilum bud. That's Magical Venus, that one. This blooms reliably for me, and it never seems to maintain more than 2 fans. And this year's fan is weak. You know, the leaves didn't extend as well as they should have done, and yet it still managed to produce a bud. So that will push on now. And I think that bloomed in the winter in the house last year and lasted next to no time at all. The dry air in the house just didn't do them any good. So despite it being a little nippy for them out here, and they might need their woolly socks on, they've got their humidity and they've got their extra light, and I think that's more important than a drop of a few degrees. I'm not sure whether this bud on this Masdevallia is actually going to open. It's got a brown mark on it. This is the new Masdevallia that came from Ridlington. It's Decuman crossed with Vecchiana. But the bud is twice as big as when it was sort of first looked at, I suppose. And this is a pain in the proverbial to keep hydrated because it's in such large, airy bark. And I just think that somebody went a bit slack on the moss when they potted that one up, because there's very little moss in there. That dries out in 2 days. And that's, you know, in the winter time with high humidity, so it's not good. But there is another spike coming, so if this bud doesn't make it, as I say, it's got round this side, so it's got a brown mark on it. So it may not have its proper colours when it opens, but the bud is progressing. I thought it had blasted a while ago, but it's still growing, so it may still open. We shall see. Oh, should be quite a decent sized bloom with Vecchiana in it, because they're quite large. I don't know about the other one. And lurking down here that I'm not going to get out, the Dracula Bella latest spike is pushing on now. There's just a sign of a bud starting, and I think there's a couple more starting, and there's some roots pushing out, which are good. And the other Dracula there, which is Pusilla, I think that one is, that's got 3 spikes on it. This is the most developed so far. I still have yet to have a Dracula bloom in here, but then I've only started with Draculas this year, you know, and I've still only got 2 and 1 Dracula crossed with a Masdevallia. You have to bear in mind, once upon a time, Draculas were classed as Masdevallias. They got separated out in the dim and distant, as they say. So we looked at the tiny twinkle. The other twinkles, over here is the come on, cinnamon one, which this spike belongs to, and this is starting to show a bit of colour. And then the spikes on the yellow ones are not even, they're only just showing signs of buds, so that one's going to be quite a bit later. The spike on this one's getting tangled up with my Dendrobium. This Dendrobium had some serious problems back in the summer, because although those 3 canes look like old canes, they were actually new growths this year, and they dumped their leaves, and yet the older leaves stayed. Something went wrong, as yet to be determined, but nonetheless it's blooming its head off. It's got spikes on many canes, so and looking nice. The Deesa's going to be gone soon. I'm surprised that's still there. My Tulumnia, 2 buds, 2 blooms have dropped. It's still got some, but they are fading fast. But if you look lurking underneath, it's already got 2 branches. So it's going to have a continuation for some time yet. Yeah? So the branches don't appear necessarily at the same time as the spike extends. Like on things like Oncidiums, the spike extends and it branches as it goes, if it's going to. Whereas Tulumnias, the spike seems to extend, produce its buds, bloom, and then a bit later on it thinks, I don't think those blooms are going to last much longer, perhaps we better get some more going, and it starts to branch. So the branches come later. So those were once Oncidiums as well, reclassified. The only other Tulumnia with a spike, which I'm going to have to move the plant soon, is this one, and the spike's getting tangled up with the plant above it. Do I see buds yet? I can't hold it still enough. Buds are not forming yet, but I need to get that one in a place where that spike doesn't get knocked. otherwise it could be damaged, which we don't want. This little Cattleya hybrid is dropping. I think I've probably only got about 2 days left and this one's going to be gone. That was its second spike. New acquisition, wasn't necessarily expecting it to bloom. The big Cattleya up there, Cattleya Angel Heart, I never expected both of those spikes to be out at the same time. And I'm quite impressed. That plant has improved dramatically since I got it. It's now got some quality leaves on the new growths, which means that sometime in the future I can take off the tatty ones that were on it when I got it. The trouble is, like, you know, I got an Orchid Society meeting on Friday. I'd love to take that along, but it'll get knocked to pieces in the point scheme because of the plant, because the leaves are so tatty on the older parts. Oh, that was a lovely little discussion I had with a couple of growers about a level playing field. We were looking at some plants on the table, and several there was a Catasetum there, and one of the giant flipping things, I can't remember, but several of the plants on the table were ones that have a dormant period and lose all of their leaves, and then they grow brand new leaves for the next year. Well, that's not a level playing field. You know, if you're going to put a Vanda on the table, that could be 10 years old. It's going to get knocked a bit. You know, same with Cattleyas. It's impossible to keep all of the leaves pristine over that number of years. So the people that are exhibiting or showing the annually deciduous type plants have got a set of brand new leaves. They shouldn't have one mark on them compared with some of the others. So we were having a discussion, you know, we're not on a level playing field. Some of us have to work really hard to get a quality looking plant on a plant that holds its leaves almost indefinitely. It's not easy keeping them in that tip-top condition all the time. Anyway, that's that. My little Phalaenopsis has dropped a few buds, a few blooms. That's its last one for a bit now. But it does look like it's going to extend again. I mean, it's got two spikes on the go. There's another Phalaenopsis spike lurking somewhere. You'd have to peer. It's the one nearest the glass, and the spike is, well, obviously coming out the base of the plant, heading off into the sky towards the left. Now that's got buds forming on it, so we'll have another Phalaenopsis out in the not too distant future. The Dendrobium cunico blooms seem to be hanging on quite nicely. There's no sign of any buds on any of the other canes yet, but I must admit, when these buds showed through the cane, they extended and opened quite quickly. Now, I was quite surprised at the speed, but again, they're lasting quite well. And the top growth, which is a mass, is still growing. It's still extending these canes. So they are now, I mean, if you take this cane in particular, that is now nearly as long as the longest cane on the plant, and it's still growing. So I think this latest set of growths down the line, possibly this time next year, could be in bloom, because it's one of those that blooms on the is more likely to bloom on the previous year's canes once they've dropped their leaves. But again, quite a new plant, so not absolutely sure. And well, these are going to be a bit bright. The other Twinkle, which is the other new acquisition, that's getting a bit of extra help with the old lights. And this is the Twinkle crossed back with Sotoanum, and the buds are really starting to get some colour on them and swell now. So despite being repotted, it's progressed nonetheless. These are my other two Latoria types. This is Nora Tokunaga crossed with Aberrans. Not much to look at from the front. Well, that looks like the first bloom's going over. But these have been out ages, and probably still will be. And my little Rhodostictum has now got virtually all its buds open on this spike. These are lovely little blooms. I love these. These last about 3 months. And another spike on an old cane with 2 more buds to come. That's going to be out ages. That'll still be out in the, you know, end of February, I expect, at least. And there's other Cattleyas moving, but I'm not filming sheaths, if you know what I mean. Sheaths can sometimes be a disappointment, where you're so pleased that you've got a sheath, but you don't get any buds. So I'm more inclined to wait till something pokes out the top of the sheath and it's going to be a definite blooming. And we have definitely got that happening on the BC Meikei. They're not big enough to show yet. And oh yes, they are. If you look through that gap, yeah, that spike's pushing out and the buds are forming. So we will have, there's 2 on the go in that plant, along with about 4 new growths and various other things going on. Can't make up its mind up what it's supposed to be doing at the moment, growing or blooming. So it's going to do both. Great. Let's have a quick look around. Oh, the zygo spike, people like to see that progressing. This is pushing up now, it's growing quite well, and I may be able to twist that round to see if the other new growth has a spike on it. No, never mind. What about this other one up the back here? That keeps, oh, that's got a spike. Yay! Yep, that new growth's definitely got a spike as well. Whoopee! That's just a no ID hybrid. What about you? Are you going to bloom? Doesn't look like it. So it seems at the moment I've got 2 lovely new growths on this zygo, one of which has got a spike on it. And I've got 2 nice new growths on this zygo, one of which has got a spike on it. What is it? 1 in 2? This poro zygo is getting a bit big for its boots. Well, not its boots, but its placement. Every time I'm getting up to turn the lights on and off, I mean, you can see I've kinked that leaf. Well, that's going to break there soon, and that's half of one of its largest leaves gone. So that reduces its photosynthesis. But the new growths are pushing up nice new sets of leaves, but this one's been damaged so much because of where it is. The leaves poke out, so they keep getting walked into or knocked, which is a shame. But I haven't really got anywhere else to put the flipping thing. I don't want it right in the sunshine, so I can't put it, like, you know, in some of the other taller shells because they're too bright. That's why it's set back a bit here, so it gets the natural light in through that bit without any sun, and a bit coming in from the sides now and again. But yeah, there's only so much you can do, and there's only so much room. And let's have a quick look at this thing. This doesn't come out very often because it's not doing anything. This is Bulbophyllum Wilbur-Chan. It's my biggest Bulbophyllum by far. Lovely compact rhizomes on this. So there's a whole bunch of new growth there. Not one spike. Nope, not a light. What about around the other side? Another load of new growth around here. Nope, not a light. So still no sign of blooms. There's no way that plant is not blooming size. Come on. Perhaps I'll take it outside and show it what the hedge looks like. Oh, the other tiny little Bulbophyllum, which is incorrectly named. I did get apologies from the person I got the plant from, but it wasn't their fault, you know, if that's the tag that it says. This was labelled as Bulbophyllum Tingabarium, and it isn't, because when it bloomed it wasn't. But I mean, that's got 4 new growths, which on a plant that size is not bad. 4 leads, so potentially 4 blooms to come on that little one. They're all on the outside of the pot in such a place that they've turned upwards nicely. If you see what I mean. Instead of hanging over the edge. But yeah, we've got 4 new growths on that. That's coming on nicely now, that little plant. But it isn't what it says on the tag. It is something else, as yet unidentified. Next time it blooms, we'll get some pictures out there and see if anybody can recognise it. Now, if I knew which nursery it came from, I've actually got a picture of when it did bloom. I may be able to find that bloom and match it up to a different name, but that does involve work and effort, which at the moment I've got better things to do. I'm happy when something blooms. If it's got the wrong tag on it, it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. It doesn't worry me that much. It worries some people to death having a name wrong, but not so much me. Right, so that'll do. This is more of a look round and things on the go, and to get away from the watering and feeding stuff. I mean, all I've got to do today is flush some of my mounts, not all of them. The resting ones were done not that long ago. They don't even need looking at. But there are mounts that are growing, albeit a bit slower, but they are still growing. So they still need watering and feeding, albeit at lower levels, but today's flush time. So that's a quick whiz round with some plain water and get on with other things. So thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Whoops, I always forget something. One of my little Dendrobium Cuthbertsonii has a nice strong looking bud on it. And it does have some new growths starting to push out too on this one. This is the not very good plant that seems to be pushing out new growth and now looks like it's going to bloom. And the other one that didn't look a bad plant and had some good roots doesn't look very happy at all. In fact, it really doesn't look very happy at all. There's no sign of any new growths on that one. It might not make it, that one. We shall see. I mean, at least it's got the cool temperatures now. But yeah, it looks like we might get a bloom on this little one. That'd be good. We shall see. But yeah, it has pushed out a couple of new growths, so it's doing something. And we'll see if it'll bloom. And we can see what colour it is, because they do vary quite a bit. Right, that really is it now. See you next time. Bye for now.